Welcome back to the Say It Sister podcast with Karen, Harris Kelly and Lucy Barkus. We gather every week to bring you conversations that women often have in private. We want to say them loudly, proudly, with the hope that we can all use our voices powerfully and also help us all feel a little less alone. Today we're tackling something that impacts nearly every single one of us. We're talking about our own voices, how we use them, how we hide them, but most importantly, how we can stop ourselves from shrinking to make other people feel comfortable.
Hey there, Lucy here. And I had this question going round my mind about how many times have I started to shrink myself, or made myself feel a little bit smaller just so people might like me, or because I'm big energy, and when people meet me, they feel my energy, and I always worry that it's a bit too much because people have told me I'm a bit much. So it got the question that came up is like, have you ever felt yourself maybe typing in emails and just sprinkling in the words just or try or these small minimizing language, I'm just checking in, or I just thought I'd share, those kind of phrases that are basically good girl, meek, small, shrinkage kind of phrases. Or even perhaps you've been in a meeting and midway through a brilliant point, a colleague comes and speaks right over you. I know that's happened because that's happened to me, and I'm one of those loud ones. And in that moment, you just stop, and often you just let them talk, and then you try and recapture your flow later, but the moment's gone. And each time that happens, you shrink a little bit more and a little bit more. So today, that's what we're going to put an end to. So we're dedicating this episode, the next 30 minutes, to kind of like claiming our space again. We're going to share some actual phrases we hear when we're out and about working with our clients, and we're going to try and flip them to sound more empowering, more authoritative, more assertive, without sounding, well, bossy. Um, so yeah, they'll be there, so you can keep them in your back pocket whenever you want. And we'll cover how, apologizing for your mere existence is over, and so how you can like really confidently raise a suggestion, bring an idea, question somebody else's thoughts, and how to deal with those chronic interrupters, and how to shut down any of that unwanted attention, especially when it's in the workplace, in a professional but absolutely boundaried manner. So grab a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and we're going to take you on that journey.
Yeah, and I want to start by saying there's something about the why. Why girls, why women lose their voices. And I think it's such a personal journey that we all go on to finding and reclaiming our voices. Because clearly, as little children, we had a voice, we knew how to say no, but something happens around the school journey that, makes us sort of put these sort of like straitjackets on and, conform. And I do believe that some of that is necessary and needed. However, I think it also dampens us down to a point where, we're scared to speak up. I think it's a personal journey. I think it's a collective journey. If it was
Yes.
just me over here saying, oh, I lost my voice. I've lost my voice many times in my life. I've also found it again many times in my life. But it's not just me. And this is why we have this power in this collective, because this is all women, and also the deliberate movement to suppressing women's voices. And we see it in some countries very deliberately. In other countries, maybe that's masked a bit more, where we think we've got, free speech and stuff, and then we realise that things are being shut down behind the scenes. Even protesting,
AKA LinkedIn right now.
LinkedIn right now,
Yeah.
Instagram to some extent as
Yeah.
well, because I've had my posts silenced, about the Epstein files, and then I've had to go in and request for it to be changed because it's about common interest, which it totally is, and then it's been changed. But had I not have gone through that process, they would have been taken down, those posts, and it was about the victims. So, this is something that we have to experience in life. I think the more we experience it, the more the opportunity to claim our voices and claim them really strongly. But it's still hard work, and I want to understand the stories behind why women are not speaking up, and knowing that there is so much inner work to do. And the thing that I want to sort of offer as a gift at this start in this conversation is, before any big conversation, we need to prepare ourselves. And there's the point of instinct when sometimes we speak up and we've not thought about it and it just comes through us, which I love. But when we're going in and we're wanting something really important and we're preparing, we need to do some quite deep work here. And the thing that I will always say to my clients is take a pause, get your book, your journal out and your pen. And I want you to write these things down. I want you to write, I feel, whatever you're feeling, write it down. I feel nervous. I feel scared. I feel small. Whatever it might be, write it down. I'm believing that they will say no. They won't listen to me. I'm wasting my time. Um, Write that down. But what I really need right now is, and whatever you need, whatever they need, more money, flexibility, time, different times. I want to work on different timings, different time zones, whatever it might be, write it down because the need is what is the thing that needs
Yeah.
your honor. And then work through the belief that's there and work through the feeling that's there so that you can go in there and be like, regardless of what answer I get, I believe that I'm worthy enough of this money, this promotion, this flexibility. I am worthy of it, and I know it in every single part of my body because I've done the work. Just tell me that I'm worth it.
I've got to say the women that we work with, the coaching clients, they come to us because they're already, way ahead in their careers, but they know they can do this work and then some. They come to us to do that reaffirming, to say it out loud. So this process you've just shared, absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
And then go and say it to somebody trusted.
And
Practice it. Look in the mirror and say those words confidently.
yeah. And also that there is something about it that is also on the positive side that we can flip it and say, I feel empowered. I feel my absolute prime of my life. I believe I'm worthy of this and I need X. I need to do 2 days a week, full
Yeah.
stop, and then see what comes back. So there's the positive side of it. Now, we might not verbalize that outwards in such a way, or we might do. We might do and say, I know my worth in this company. I feel
I
like
mean, that is amazing. Just say that exactly as you've just said it. That's enough.
it's enough. I know my value in this company, and I believe that I'm, absolutely fantastic and in my prime, and I need X. Simple. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? So let's go into some of the shrinking language. I mean, we've kind of done like one version and the other version, and it's nice to flip things on the other side because I think
Yeah.
often we go in and we just take one road, but actually there's always two sides of a coin, isn't there? And we want to be able to hold space for both. So let's start talking about this shrinking language, which you started off so brilliantly with. I feel like this conditioning. Women are told to soften their edges, not be gnarly. I love that word gnarly, but like not be gnarly, and be cute and sweet, smile. And we're learning how to be light and how to be likable and how to be accommodating. And this creeps into our vocabulary, and words are such a brilliant example of how we're feeling. And so when we use certain words, it's such a gift as coaches because we're like, ooh, that word's just stuck in the middle of that, sentence. It means something. What's that about? And we want to get into that today. Let's talk about the apology. Let's talk about, the good girls. Let's talk about how we felt at school. I didn't speak up. I only started speaking up when I got to university, I think. But I was actually really scared of being on stage. And I did a media degree, history and media degree. And I remember like having to get on the stage and do certain things, and I remember the nerves in my body and the sound in my ears because it goes into my ears, and that it's like whooshing water is what I can hear, and I remember that, and the sweaty hands, and just thinking, oh my god, I don't want to be here, and yet I did want to be there. I wanted to be on that stage. I wanted to stand up for something, and I wanted to have a career, and so I wanted it, but I feared it, and it's like this sort of push pull sometimes. And people have told me all my life that I speak quietly, and that's been something that's always stayed with me. And I am quietly spoken, but I do have a voice, and I think it's okay to have a quiet speaking voice as long as I can project it when I need to. And that's been
I've
my
got to
personal
say,
work.
I'm totally the opposite to you in your whole experience. And the thing that was pressed onto me was that I was too loud, too opinionated, too in your face. Now, when I meet people, like I was at a counter protest, and this woman just turned around to me and she said, "I love your energy." And I'm like, wow, I feel so validated because most of the time my energy was always seen as too much, and I was told to be softer or quieter. Um, and so I was shrinking, and I was never rude. I was never, yeah, I was never too much. It's just when something came into my head, because I have ADHD, I now know I just needed to blurt it, or if I was enthusiastic, it would just come out. Um, and I understand, how powerful that is because I can influence, and I can, bring people along with me. But yeah, also in the back of my mind, it's that constant, especially in the working world, don't speak up, don't be so assertive, because I've been told I'm too ambitious, I'm too assertive, too loud, all of those things, too, and it was actually just that other person's mirror.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I I didn't really listen to them. Yes, I might have dialed down a little bit to be professional, but no, I've never been backwards and coming forwards. And that's why a lot of women do find me, because they see that in me and like, how does she do it? Or I want to be like that. And so I absolutely, I help the women who are on the cusp. They want to be there. And I just give them that. Well, often it's the confidence, but sometimes it's just giving them the key phrases or the tools, which we're going to talk about today. So I want to bring in the perspective of how do you start your emails? um, or when you need to make a request, do you go ultra formal so it doesn't sound anything like you, and you use all the like the keywords and the jargon of like, to whom it may concern? Or do you start with, oh, really sorry to bother you? And it's just that reminder that you are at work doing your job. You're not bothering anybody. If you've got something to add, or you need something from somebody, or you need to give some information, it's never a bother. The same with if you're going up to somebody's physical desk, and you need to talk to them about it. Actually, this is about your work. You need to be able to communicate. So never say, oh, sorry to bother you, or, can I just get, there's that word again, or, oh, I'll try and come back later. No, just say, look, I really need some time. So yeah, we're going to go through three or four different scenarios and just give you some how-tos. And I'm going to maybe say it in my words, and then you can hear the softer Karen say it in hers, and just notice that it's actually not so much about how high your voice is or whatever. It's about you totally owning it and using the words and practicing them. So here's some of my top ones, and then I'll come to you, Karen, and you can share some of your ways of saying the same thing in the words that you'd use. So here we go. Instead of saying sorry for the delay, try thank you for your patience. I mean, that is just so powerful, isn't it? And I hear this so many times. Oh, sorry, I'm late. Sorry, it was delayed. Oh, sorry. And then come up with a whole list of excuses. And you just wound people up now. They just want to know, that you're here now. So just a simple thank you for your patience shows respect. Instead of saying, oh, sorry to bother you, use, do you have a moment to discuss this? Or I need to raise something with you. Is now a good time? And again, just notice the change in my tone as I say it. Um, Instead of saying, oh, does that make sense? Which implies that maybe, you're explaining it, you're actually, framing your questions as a question that you're questioning yourself rather than you're questioning them. So maybe change it to something like, how does that sound to you? Or what are your thoughts on this approach? And you're inviting them in to be more inclusive. You genuinely sound like you want to hear their thoughts rather than validating your own. So share, Karen, how would you approach those kind of questions or those interactions?
I think sorry for the delay. I wouldn't even say it. I would just go straight in. For me,
Good,
it's just
good.
like things get delayed, don't they? So I wouldn't even do that one. I would just be like, right, I like to just get into it. So
Yes.
I do apologize for things though. I will own that. I'm not saying that I don't apologize for things. I'll say sorry to bother. I do say sorry to bother you. That's one of my mine that I can
Mm,
own that one. Um, I think especially when because my whole thing has been around. I work with really busy, really senior people,
but you're not bothering them.
and
You're
I
just
am
saying hello.
I hold time in such high regard that it's such a. I mean, for me, time is a quantifiable, like it's like money. And so time is, so I hold time, and I'm always like, if I just want to support and be of assistance. And if I get into my head, and I'm having to chase people for things, as we have to do, we have to chase people because everybody's time poor. So the chasing is something that I want to apologise for, that I've had to chase them. But it's not
However, the
really on me,
minute
it's on them.
no, but the minute you say sorry to bother you, you're putting in the mind that you are a bother. So
Yeah,
already you're positioning yourself as a nag or a pain, and
yeah,
you're just not. You're trying to offer them something awesome, and you're just trying to
exactly.
get them to say yes or no to something.
Exactly.
That's not a bother, that's a gift.
I also get lots of emails from leaders saying, "Sorry, it's taken me so long to get back to you." So I see it on the other foot, and I
Oh,
always
that's
say,
genuine though, isn't it? That
yeah, and I
feels
always
genuine.
say, "There's nothing to apologise for,"
Yeah.
because I think we all have this understanding of life, of work, of the busyness of everything. So I think everybody generally has an understanding that if things are taking a bit longer, it's for a really good reason. So I feel like in the business world, certainly with the people that I mix with, we all get it, and we all get where each other is, the seats that we all sit in, and there's a lot of respect in that world for me anyway. So that's but it's an interesting one because the apology is always there, and I think it's on all sides. And maybe it's a very British thing as well, where we feel the need to sort of apologise for anything. And I
Yeah,
was,
but I actually respect that when if somebody has left you hanging for some time or hasn't responded, I actually welcome the apology, to say I'm really, I'm sorry or I apologize for the delay, in that respect, because it in an email it just starts the flow of like, okay, I'm respecting your time as well. But
yeah,
it's when it's that constant starting everything with an apology when
mm,
we've got serious work to do. You're being paid to do the work. So genuinely, if you have messed up, apologize, but don't just apologize just for opening up an email
no, definitely
or
not.
going to somebody's desk or walking through the doors. You don't need to apologize for that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
And
I
honestly,
agree with that.
yes, good, good. And I was listening to a woman speak last week, and I could just sense her lack of trust in herself by the words that she was using. And it was something like, oh, I think maybe we could just perhaps, well, maybe look at a different angle. And she used all of these phrases in all of this succession. And
Oh,
actually, all I needed her to say was something like, I have a different angle on that, or I hold a different perspective. Let me share it rather than just apologizing. And I actually used it as a teachable moment and even got her to say exactly the same phrase, but from an assertive point of view. Like, I think we could just maybe, perhaps, we could try a different angle. And it was more about the tone and the pace of the words, but you could see her shrinking, and it just made everybody else then not trust her thought because she didn't clearly trust herself.
I think
So
there's a
that was a really
difference.
teachable moment.
Yeah, between arrogance and humbleness, and also then there's
Absolutely.
the insecurities, and they're all different, and you can say exactly the same things, but you get the feeling from the words. And I
Yeah.
think the insecurity sounds like that. The arrogance is just like, I'm going to steam through you no matter what, and no
Yes.
one likes that, and that's like a really bullish feeling, and that for me is going to shut me straight down, and I'm going to be so evasive
And I
at that
don't see
point.
many women doing that.
No.
No.
And then you've got the humble, and I know so many brilliant humble women, and I love the way they approach it because there's a
Mm.
humbleness to it. Yet they're still channeling and demanding and being very directive, but they're doing it from a humble seat. So I think that's my preferred um request. There was something I was going to say, and I'm just gone just gone totally blank. Um
That's fine.
yeah,
But own it again. Don't apologize, just own it.
it wasn't, no, it's like the blankness is there, but I'm more frustrated because there was something really important that I wanted to say. If that was it, I came from an ex PR background, and back in the day when people would call each other, you'd have a phone on your desk, and you would be calling the national newspapers, and you'd have 30 seconds to pitch a story idea to them before they hung up on you. So I learned very, very quickly how to direct my communication and be very, very like getting people's attention, and also that you didn't have time to apologize. It was literally like, I've got something really good for you, and it's
Amazing.
this. And I think that directiveness through my job has really put me in good stead because when I need to have a conversation, I do cut straight through because that was how I was trained, and I was 21 when I first started working in PR. So it set me up, and I think sometimes when there's sometimes I can go off on a storytelling trajectory, but when I'm working in the business field and when I'm coaching, I'm so direct and to the point because something kicks in me that's like, just don't do that. You've got 30 seconds, make your
Yeah.
mark. And every question I ask, it's like 30 seconds, make the mark. It's like it's just inbuilt in me, and I feel like that training was great, and I would want every woman to have that kind of training of like, you've got 30 seconds, go make your request. Actually, really, now we talk, it's changed even more these days. Now it's more like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So you've got 15 seconds, make your request and make it clear. That is something
And
that we
this
all
is
need to do.
skills. It's
Yeah.
just skills. And which is why we wanted to bring you, new listeners, some key phrases, because these are just skills about how to project your voice, how to absolutely own it and know what you want, and value the other person's time, and then just ask for what you need. So we're going to just talk about these questions, or that when you need to raise a question or you need to make a request. So here's another, whether it's for the boardroom or on a Zoom call in the office, whatever. So, sorry, just a quick question. That is a phrase that I hear so much. Rather than, well, what we want you to say is something like, I have a question about that. Brilliant. I mean, it's just taking out the sorry and the quick. Um, I might be wrong, but no, from what I understand. I mean, how powerful is that? If you've been working on this and you are the data expert, you're the subject matter expert, you will have an understanding. So don't judge yourself by, I might be wrong, because the comeback is, yes, you are wrong. Somebody is going to fight you or disagree with you. So, no, from what I understand, XXX. And then again, does that make sense to let me know if you need more detail? Let me know if you need more clarity. Put it back on them rather than putting the doubt in you. And yeah, when you pitch an idea for something that you think is awesome, I recommend we take this approach. Or here's another option to consider. There are so many of these powerful words that you just maybe need to write your personal list of, whatever your natural style is, and then flip it in the most confident, humble, but also assertive manner. What do
Yeah.
you say to that, Karen?
Well, I also think it's really important to build some bridges as well, because we can say, like, what I love about your comment is this, and it's like a full stop, and
Yes,
I
and
really
yeah,
want us to consider my original idea because the data tells me that. Or,
brilliant.
through the conversations I've had, I have learnt that. So, we don't have to sort of like, I mean, unless someone's coming out with something and it's totally preposterous and it's just like there's just no way. Sometimes we have to sort of break that, and lead from a different place. So it's like, I disagree with everything that you've just said, and this is my view.
And
Blah
they're
blah blah.
clean sentences.
It's
The
very
way that you've
clean,
presented it's clean. Yeah.
it's clean. Or if you're like, I don't want to, like there's something there, but we're going off on a sort of like a weird sort of like track now, and let's bring it right back. You just do that. I love what you just said, or what I love about what you just said is it's very, very clear, and you're obviously passionate about it. And let's refocus again, so that
Mm.
we're not losing. You can bring people on the journey with you, or you can shut it down. But it's like the yes and. I think we need to sort of like all learn, because no one taught me that. I learned that through leadership training with CTI.
Yeah.
All these different bridging phrases and sentences that you can adapt in the moment that mean that no matter what's coming at you from other people, because if we're in a meeting together and there's lots of other people in the room, and we all get excited and then things start moving, which is all part of the creative process, but it still needs to be almost like funneled through and brought into something that at the end of it, it's like, okay, we're clear which directions we're going in now, because you don't want to start shutting people's ideas down, but at the same time.
So we ban the phrase no but, because that's the opposite of yes and, isn't it?
Exactly.
And you hear it with your children, but you hear it in the workplace. But no but, no but, and like stop that. It's
Yeah.
yes and it's something that we probably heard it in the same classroom, and that's it. It just becomes part of our vocabulary because we've had to train ourselves to do that inclusive yet clear communication.
Absolutely.
Um, And there's that whole thing about remembering it. It's very much about empowerment, but it's remembering who you are. You were hired in that role for your skill, your professionalism, your expertise, your intelligence, whatever the thing is you were hired for. So know that you already have value and you have something to say. If you've been invited to that meeting, given that project, it's because you're good. You don't need to then apologize. You just need to own it. And if you've got a suggestion, it's because you are stood on a mountain of value and you can see clearly from up there and you're just offering that. Because if you don't, A, people will not think you've got anything to say, or when you do come out in a maybe untrusting way, you're not backing yourself, well, they won't believe you, they won't trust you, they won't back you. So
Yeah,
again, it's like remember that mountain of value that you stand on and
absolutely.
use it, embrace it.
And there's something I'm thinking about the field of intuition when we're in meetings and we're feeling things, because sometimes we can be going down a certain path with an idea or a conversation, yet the energy in the room feels quite flat,
Mm.
and there's information in that, and I'm always like tuning into what's going on around me as well. And I think women are particularly good at this, like they know the right questions to ask in that can actually drive things into the right area. Because if you're in a meeting and there's a lot of flatness and you're discussing something and there's no energy there, then the likelihood is what you're talking about is flat. And I
Yeah.
think what we all need is to get some more inspiration and passion moving as well. And
So how
just
would you
to name
phrase that?
that,
Come on, let's,
I would just
yeah,
name it. I would just say, whilst this feels like, still feels like a solid idea, I'm sensing or noticing that everybody's yawning, like it feels like there's a bit of like we're in a bit of a flat space. Do we need a break and come back? Or is there something that we should look at here? Because if you've got people like doing a lot of that and yawning away, maybe they just need to get out of their seats and they need to go to the toilet and have a coffee or whatever. That's fine. Make sure you name that. But it might be that there's something here with where you're going that it's just dead space.
yeah,
And
there's
I
no
think,
energy to it. There's no commitment. There's no vibe going on. It's a tumbleweed moment almost.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's just to sense it and name that
Mm.
it's sensing. That doesn't mean I'm feeling something. I'm gonna give that to you because no one else is feeling it. We're not taking risks in that way. We're just naming what's in the room. I think it's
Well,
different.
in Orsk, what we're taught is to literally hand it back and say, I'm noticing some flatness here. What are you noticing? And others might say, well, I'm noticing blah de blah. And like, brilliant. Okay, so what are we going to do with that? Or how can we shift it up? And you're passing it back onto the group. And I love that approach because I don't want it to be groupthink. Feeling flat, or no, it's not saying it is flat
Yes.
in here. It's saying I'm noticing this. What are you noticing? And it just brings that awareness back into the space.
Yeah.
So I think that's really powerful as well. That's just like totally owning where you are and noticing. And that is part of that mountain of value. All of that intuition and that sensing, it's all part of your value.
I
And
think
that
it's
might be the thing you bring.
Yeah, and it's especially important if you are leading that project. So if you're the person in that seat that's got people around you and you're all collaborating together and it's your baby that you're, wanting to sort of take out into the world in some way, then ultimately you want to have the energy right and you want to make sure that there is enthusiasm and get the data that you need because you're going to be left to sort of take that forward. So that's also really, really important. It's almost like I'm leading this. I want to make sure that I'm leading it, from a energized positive place, not from flatness or, flatness. That's all I can see.
Yeah.
So, should we
So
talk
we've,
about getting interrupted?
yeah. Well, I was going to say, oh, well, we've just interrupted each other. Brilliant. Couldn't have timed it better. But I was just like making that link back because actually I suppose what we've been talking about up until now is how do we interrupt the flow or interrupt to get our idea in a really respectful way. But of course, yeah, we get interrupted all ourselves. It's like, yeah, that moment where do you surrender? Or do you start just carry on? Because I know somebody who will just carry on talking until the other person realizes that they've interrupted, and it works for them. That's their technique. It works. But for others, that would just be excruciating.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about how to manage interrupters.
I
What's your
think,
thoughts?
yeah, there's something else is because we were coaches and we were taught to blurt. And for me, when
Yeah,
we first started, like when I first learned that coaching skill, like it was like, your client's talking away about something and you're feeling whatever you're feeling and you're thinking, and it's like interrupt them because they're going down a path.
they're
Actually,
flat again.
blurt and interrupt them. And for me, I was like, oh my God, that is so incredibly rude. To stop somebody in the flow of a conversation is, and then I realised that it was in total service. Depends what it is.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
because they're
so,
just on a monotone talking about something that's got no depth or anything, and we can notice it. So we're like, why are you even, which realm are you in right now? Because they're not in
and
the
what's
room
that
with
got to do
you.
with the topic that we're working
Yeah.
on? And I think, you know, every moment is precious in meetings, in coaching sessions, like in anything you do, every moment is precious. And so it's that, like, make the energy really good until the last second of that conversation. I'm all about that. And I know you're about that because you've got great energy. So it's like knowing that every conversation, every word can lead us somewhere, and knowing when to interrupt and when to keep talking. And I think that's really, really important. And it's like flowing with that. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely been interrupted many times. And I've also been ignored, in boardrooms, and basically been talking and like nobody's responding. So that was earlier on in my career when I was in my 20s. It was really quite painful, but it rerouted me in a way that made me go, I can't work in these environments. I knew it, and so I found other ways for me to be honoured and respected in rooms. But, still, if it's happening to you, it's happening. And it can really, really erode your confidence. Because, you're like, we all want to be heard, don't we? We've all got this natural thing inside us that we want to be heard. And so I think acknowledging how we're feeling is really, really important as number one. And number two, being like, if your voice is not being heard, it's not being heard. I think we have to be quite truthful about that. And then what would you do, Lucy, to sort of bring it back?
So I get quite playful with it. And I might look at them directly with a smile, or even like a bit of a matronly look, and just say something like, "Excuse me, I'm going to finish my point," or then, "Is it okay if I carry on?" And do it in almost a bit of a sarky way, just to name it, like, you've just interrupted me, and get the attention back on me. So that's like one of the ways, and that's just my style. I was brought up in a very sarky house, so I'm quite good at doing low level interruptions of the interrupter, and just like, and like I said, it's how you match it with the body language and the tone, so it's not belittling them, it's just like naming it. So yeah, I might have a little bit of fun with them. um and others, I know and I've seen, have just been really direct and just say, "Please let me finish my point, and then I'll happily let you share your thoughts." And that's their energy, because they've got a lot more of a steady, calm, authoritative energy. And others who have just said, "Oh, excuse me, I'm not quite finished yet," and they do it in a bit of a tongue-in-cheek way. Um, so there are lots of different ways that you naturally can do it, but it's about naming it in the moment. And even adding on something like, "I'm still speaking, I will hand over to you in a moment, and then you can add your point," and just being really, yeah, affirmative and setting some boundaries. And then I've seen other people do it in a lot more casual way, and just say, "Oh, just hold that thought. I know it's going to be brilliant, but I just want to wrap this idea up first." So again, just doing it in a much more of a relaxed way. But again, you've got to find your style, you've got to find your words, and practice them out loud, because the next time, we'll give you the words here, you can write them all down, but unless you
Yeah.
practice saying them out loud, it doesn't matter how many times you're in that moment of being interrupted, those words won't come to your head, because you're in that fight, flight, freeze stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel like, there is something to say, I am noticing that you keep speaking over me, or you keep, interjecting when I'm, doing my bit. That could be done individually, one on one, through a
Yeah.
separate conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to be in front of everyone in a room. But there is something about calling it out, or going to someone and saying, "This person, this is what keeps happening." Go above the person if you're not
Yeah, or get an
able
ally.
to
Will
go
you
and
help?
have that
Yeah, notice
conversation.
it.
So there are many ways to call something out, direct or indirect, but it does need to be called out, because the likelihood is it's happening in other spaces and other areas as well. And, I feel like I get really well listened to in my work, but, at home sometimes I've got a 7-year-old, she's not listening to me, and you'll hear me saying in the house, "Nobody's listening to me. Listen to me." Nobody's listening to me, like that kind of thing. And it sort of makes me laugh a little bit, because it's like, okay, well, I get to practice all the time what it feels like to not be listened to.
Yeah.
And I'll say to my husband, "Okay, you're not listening to me. this is very important. Let me just express what I need to express, and then you can, share back what you've heard. And he's like, okay. And he knows what to do now. So we go through that
Mm,
little dance. But it's really, really important because otherwise I'm going to get really, really, really frustrated. And the more frustrated I get, it will turn into anger.
yeah.
So I have it in my home life, not in my professional life. Other people will have it the other way around, and it's like, but it always humbles me back into, oh, this is what it feels like to not be listened to. Even though most of it is totally unintentional, but I'm still having that same experience in my body. So for me, it's just about putting that back on the table.
Got a great tip for you. And I didn't get this till my girls were in their teenage years. And it used to drive me mad because the dinner would be on the table. They wouldn't come down. I'd shout them, nothing. So in the end, I just got a load of, well, we have Alexas, but there's other smart speakers, and I use it as a tannoy, and it drops in, and you can use all these little, like there's a fart noise, kisses, belches. So I'd always start with a few of those and then just say, dinner's ready in the highest pitched voice. It works. So sometimes you can use technology to get attention, interrupt, even have a buzzer in the room, go, ah,
We've got a
you've
bell. We have got a
interrupted
bell
me.
downstairs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean. But it's not so much around the table stuff. It's more just every day. But it's fine because it's humbling, and I think being
Yeah.
humbled is important. And it also just reminds me of life, And this is part of everyday life, without getting too sort of up my own, like too fussed about it. I think it's important to remember that we have to constantly keep working on our voices and calling this stuff out, whether it's unintentionally or intentionally. This is the job
Mhm.
of any woman in the world right now.
And
Um,
also, as mothers of daughters, it's just reminding them that they too have a voice, even though it's the most frustrating thing sometimes when they're yabbering on or answering back. But actually, yeah, that whole thing of be seen and not heard is not at all relevant in our households when we're raising young children.
Absolutely not.
Um,
And the other thing to add in, if somebody isn't listening to you, then you ask them a question about it. Like
yes.
just put it back on them and watch them squirm, and that's really, really powerful. It's like, what did you think about that idea that I just shared? It's, and then hold the silence. Don't say any more, and watch them, and you'll know if they're listening or not. So that's a really powerful way of just redirecting it back to the person, and they're going to know quite quickly that you're the person that will call them out without. That's a very indirective way of calling
You know
someone
what?
out,
I
but it's a
already
really good
feel
one.
like the shame of being called out like that in school. When I was chatting with my friends, and then the teacher would say, "Yes, and what are your thoughts on that, Lucy?" And oh God, yeah,
It's
it's mortifying. You pay attention, then yeah, I get that.
It is that, and it happened at school. I was a secret reader, and I went in and I read a story, and I could see that the kids were sort of like zoning out a little bit in places. And then the teacher said at the end, the final page was very much about like it's okay to be different and to know that you're different and all this. It was a lovely story, and she said, "I loved the teacher's like I loved the message of this book. What was it, children?" And I just sort of like smiled and thought, brilliant, like what a great way of just like putting it back onto them, because were they listening with it? It doesn't really, it was the end of the day, but it made me smile.
Next time they know that they're going to get questioned on it, they'll be more, yeah, pay attention. So let's go on to the one, because this is the one where we don't want attention. This is about unwanted attention that we get, whether it's out there in general public or whether it is in the workplace. Because let's face it, sisters, we've all had that unwanted attention or that unwanted touch or being
Yeah.
physically moved by somebody putting their hand around their waist or coming over your shoulder and reading what's on your laptop or tablet. It just makes me have the irk.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, go on, Karen.
I'm a really big fan of hand movements as well, because I feel like we can do something like that, the stop side. I use this all the time, and I also use it with the dog, and I'll do that down. I mean, I'm not going to do that to someone who's giving me unwanted attention. That's just going to get confusing. But certainly that I do use it, and I've said, I've noticed you're coming too close. Take one more step, and I'm going to call the police. I've used that, and I've used the hand, but it's the hand that they're
Have you
that
done
they're
that in the
responding to.
workplace?
I've not done it in the workplace. I've done it out on the street.
Mm.
But if it, when I go back into my old career, when I was like in buildings late, I was getting public transport home when I lived in London and things like that. But I was in the office a lot on my own at night, working late and different things. And I was trying to remember, was I ever on my own? And I think there was times, yeah, there was definitely times when I was on my own. But nobody ever physically came towards me. But that's what I would say, regardless of where we are. Like, I think there's a lot of power in that, because it's just reminding someone that this is your space around here. And it doesn't matter where you are. If someone's coming towards you and it's inappropriate in some way, regardless, I mean, like, that's as powerful as a no, like, no, really loud. That's it, really. But it depends on that. There's layers to this stuff, isn't there? We always know there's layers. And I think
Yeah, and
that that's when we feel
another
unsafe.
the hand thing is also quite powerful because I've had people put their hands on my shoulders and I've literally physically moved
Yeah,
their hand off my shoulder. So there are ways of doing it which don't even need massive confrontation. That is just this is a no just by using body language.
yeah,
Um, but in the workplace, especially when that unwanted attention might even show up as banter or jokes that are
yeah,
just really inappropriate. It might be the physical touching, somebody getting too close to you, or making offers to you, which now we know is classed as sexual
yeah,
harassment, and companies have to take steps.
yeah,
And there is if they don't, they can be prosecuted. But in that moment, when you find that unwanted attention of whatever form, we need to be able to equip ourselves to deal with it. And it is, it's different in a bar where you can tell somebody to F off.
yeah,
Slightly different at work where we're still supposed to act slightly professional, but we still need to have the same words or the same meaning of the words to be able to empower ourselves. Um, and I've had times where people have, I mean, we're in a works meeting and they're making jokes about sex or about,
mm,
well, actually, it's always about sex, but they're doing it in a way that's slightly under the radar. We know exactly what it means. And I have responded with, I just want to keep this conversation strictly professional.
yeah,
Or please, can we raise the bar on this? I don't want to have those kind of conversations. And it is a request in
yeah.
the first instance. I think if they carry on, then it's a very different Lucy that shows up. But that first one, it is a request, and it might come with a please. It's never an apology.
No.
There's definitely a request.
And for me, it's just about naming the uncomfortableness. I would always do
Mm,
that. If I felt uncomfortable in some way, I always put my hand on my chest. But because it's the violation, like there's something in me that
yeah,
goes, well, that feels like a violation. And I know that the first thing I'm going to feel is that squirm. And I've
yeah,
learned to trust the squirm, and now I can articulate it, whereas I couldn't articulate it before. So I really hope that there's people listening that, men or women that are going, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I feel. I go into that meeting and there are those people in that room or that one person in that room, and they always say something and it makes me feel deeply uncomfortable and like I want to squirm. And actually, what's being activated is fight, flight, and freeze.
yeah,
But we were in a meeting, so I've got to be in the room with that person. And so it's like, when you say that I feel uncomfortable,
yeah,
my request is that I mean, your way of saying it is really, really, strictly professional is, I don't think I'd ever say that, but it's finding a way to say that is much more like a little bit softer for me, So I request that we focus on this project. I'd
yeah.
probably bring it back into the work so that it's like we're here for a reason. Or I would get really fidgety. Sometimes I'm starting to fidget, and when I get into that fidget place, it's like my body is like wanting to leave. I'll be like, okay, we've got, just bring time back. I think time is a great way and say, right, we've got this much time, we've got a lot to do. Can we get down to it? But I think that's definitely the way that I would handle that. I mean, unfortunately, with this sort of thing, it tends to be when other people are not around,
Yeah.
and sometimes it can be, through a phone or something like that, where you're getting inappropriate comments. But I mean, at the end of the day, you can always take that to HR.
Yeah, well,
Um,
then you've got evidence if it's on
you've
your
got
phone.
evidence.
That's the best.
It's just if it's someone who's in a senior position who's doing
Mm,
it, then that can be women as well. I mean, I've had situations with bosses where they've been highly inappropriate, not in a sexual domain, but in an aggressive sort of manner.
mm.
And I have then gone to HR and said, I am concerned and I'm letting you know. And then it's always, do you want to proceed with this? And I've never really proceeded with things, but I've let them know, um, just as a way of sort of like, hey, I'm letting you know that this is going on. It's a difficult one though. It's such a long time ago since I was in like that sort of corporate
And
world.
I'd hope that people now would take it seriously and say, this is the next steps, rather than putting it back on the
Exactly.
victim.
Yeah.
That it would be approached slightly differently, but that's all I can hope. And
Yeah.
I've also said things like, oh, you're giving me the ick, when it's been a bit more of a banterish kind of more
Yeah.
relaxed environment. Or just said, oh, really? And just given that, like, really? That phrase, really, I've taught that to my children because it could be used in so many different ways as a I don't approve, as in like, really? Really? You know what I mean? You can use it in
Yeah.
so many different ways, but it's just knowing that whatever the facial expression, you're just questioning their judgment at that time, and then they usually correct themselves. And when somebody comes too close, you can just say, "Whoa, that's a bit close for comfort, mate," and just use it harmlessly, or you can just say simply, "Can you step back? You're in my personal space." And or you can just say, "Get back." Again, it's all about the tone and knowing the relationship, but you've got to name it, that they are too close for comfort.
Yeah.
And if they do then turn around and try and gaslight you and make you the one that's got the issue, which often happens, then they might say, "Look, oh, I was only joking, stop being so sensitive." You can just reply with, "I'm glad we are clear about my boundaries going forward," or "I'm glad you've got the message," or just name it, or
Yeah.
just say, "You might be joking, I'm not joking," and just end it, because obviously that's their uncomfortableness. They're trying to brush it off and minimize it, but you just need to hold firm. However you
Absolutely.
do that, you just need to respond.
Absolutely. I agree with everything. And I'm even thinking about, like women being in the office on their own at night. I mean, it's sort of bringing me back into that space as well. Because if I look back on my career and I'm like, oh my God, I took so many risks, because what are you going to do? Like you're walking into car parks late at night and
Oh, I
you've got your
hate that.
keys and your mobile in your hand, and and then being like in offices where people could come in who were from other shared offices I'm talking about now, where they
Yeah.
can actually walk in, the door's not locked, and you're in the office on your own. And now I'm kind of looking back and going, oh God, that's like really like deeply, deeply uncomfortable. And actually, there should be procedures that really, really, make sure that women are more protected when they're working late. Because let's face it, we live in a country where it's dark in the wintertime at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So that's most women. If there's a few of you, it's not, when you're working, you're going together, and that's all okay. But if it's just one woman, I feel like the time that we live in right now is not a time where that should be. That there just needs to be more. I think more safety procedures in place for women. Full stop. And it's not just
Yeah,
about Dave and
one of my
accounts.
clients is currently working on a solo traveller policy, because they actually went out to their teams and said, from equality, inclusion, diversity mindset, what are we missing? And they said, actually, we
Yeah,
need guidance on how do we travel, because they have to travel obviously a lot with work. And so they're going away and doing that. And they're saying, about what kind of accommodation, making sure that you get a reputable taxi company, that you're in a well-lit area, etc., etc. But I always remember getting off a plane at Birmingham Airport, and it was probably about 11:30, midnight maybe, and I walked into the multi-story. I was probably on level 4, and I was
yeah,
absolutely petrified. And I'd run out of battery as well on my phone. And I don't think I've ever felt so scared and vulnerable. And I got in my car and buckled it in, because I just thought, well, anybody could have seen me walking
absolutely.
all the way and followed me. So yeah, there's something there about knowing that. Well, I think this is why I'm giving these phrases, these powerful phrases, because actually we all know that we will be in a position where somebody says something inappropriate or does something inappropriate. And we need to have some of these skills and these phrases to be able to deal with them in the moment, because in that moment you are scared.
And there's
Your brain does shut down.
Yeah, there's a different levels of it, isn't there? There's the
Mm,
people who just want to talk over you, or just got some, they just want to be talking, and then there's the ones that want to harm and
mm.
are predators. And I think if you don't speak up for the occasions when someone's just, wants to have their
Spot
voice,
on.
then you've got probably got less chance of speaking up when a predator actually does approach you, if and when on all of that. We know what the world that we're living in right now. So we have to be able to do both. and be armed for both. And,
It's almost like your personal self-defense, isn't it? We used to go to
yeah,
classes and it wasn't to actually use it, it was just to have the power and knowledge that you could if you needed it. It's the same
absolutely.
with what we're trying to give key phrases and tools and tone of voice. Practice it.
Yeah, and I mean, stop and no. Like sometimes we just got to go into pure basics. But I think there's something about the voice that lets someone know that you're not gonna you're not gonna go without a fight. That's really important, and that's a different energy to something in a boardroom.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we're still saying no to something. So there are nuances here. But I think if I was to do it all again, I would be going to self-defense classes and really really taking that quite seriously as a way to back up my voice and my sort of
On.
belief in my own power, because I think that's
So
what we're
whether yeah, it's being confident in your body, confident in your heart and your mind, having all the tools there, and confident enough to know when to interrupt and end this podcast. So,
absolutely.
because otherwise we'll talk for hours. So yeah, it's about your voice, everybody. It's a powerful tool. You've just got to be able to find your words. And every time you choose a confident phrase over an unapologetic one, you hold yourself, you trust yourself, and an inner power comes out of you. But you need to practice those. You need to have your toolkit available. And look, don't expect to get it spot on every time. It takes a long time to unlearn these phrases and these behaviors, and it takes practice. So start small. Pick one phrase from our list today. Try it in different tones. Try it in different, pitches. See what happens, and maybe you will ban the word just. Maybe that's the thing. Or stop apologizing. Just notice how often you apologize. Maybe that's the homework that you've got to do, but start small.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Slate Sister podcast. If this episode has resonated with you, please share it with a friend, a colleague, or a sister who needs to hear it. Leave us a review on your favourite podcast app and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stand tall, speak clearly, and say it, sister.